In the dim light of a child's bedroom, a small figure sits, gazing at the ceiling, lost in thought. The toys that once got their giggles echoing lie scattered, forgotten. They aren't playing today. Instead, they're wrestling with an invisible weight that hangs heavily in the air. Why does laughter echo too loudly? What makes the silences feel so loud? These big questions tug on their tiny heart, too complicated for such small shoulders to bear. As the child ponders, they feel something unnameable, the coldness from a parent, the shouts muffled by doors, or simply a lack of warmth. Early on, they learn that the world is as unpredictable as a spinning top, leaving them with an invisible backpack loaded with confusion, shame, and yearning. This emotional baggage will follow them into adulthood like an uninvited guest, always lurking in the shadows. Fast forward to adulthood, and that same child now finds themselves faced with life's burdens. They reach for something to dull the clamor inside, something, anything. The catch: what if addiction isn't the villain in this story? What if it's the unexpected hero, swooping in to provide solace for wounds that never had a chance to heal? Society often views addiction as a sign of weakness, a moral misstep, yet deeper analysis uncovers a truth that flips the narrative. Hey everyone, welcome to Psychologist, the quiet corner of the internet for people who grew up holding their breath through childhood and now wonder why they chase chaos just to feel alive. Today, we're peeling back a painful truth: how childhood trauma quietly rewires the brain and sometimes leads us straight into the arms of addiction, not because we're weak, but because pain always finds its echo. This isn't about blame. It's about understanding why numbness can feel like home. So if you've ever looked at your own habits and thought, maybe this is how I learned to survive, you're in the right place. Hit like, share this with someone who might need to hear it, and drop a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from or what part of this story feels like yours. You're not alone here. Addiction frequently masks an emotional wound, a remnant of childhood trauma. It's not just the substance or behavior that needs scrutiny, but the emotional layers buried underneath. Trauma, however, doesn't always wear a dramatic mask. Sometimes it hides behind the everyday: a hug not given, words of reassurance never spoken, and an absence that echoes louder than words. Children's needs extend beyond food and shelter. They crave emotional attunement and unconditional love. But when that fundamental love is absent, the nervous system is wired in a constant state of threat. This doesn't simply fade with age. It clings, waiting for the right moment to surface, often manifesting as addiction. Think of it as the brain's blueprint. It's designed to safeguard us from pain. So, when the hurt becomes overwhelming, it seeks shortcuts, substances, distractions, or behaviors that promise comfort. This pursuit of solace is what makes addiction so alluring, not a quest for self-destruction, but rather an earnest search for relief from the chaotic storms of memory and emotion. And here's where things get even more intriguing. Neuroscientific research indicates that children under stress or neglect have their brains wired differently. The stress hormone cortisol runs rampant, and over time, this reshapes the reward circuits in their minds, particularly the dopamine pathways. Dopamine is supposed to be our feel-good chemical, the little cheerleader that urges us to enjoy life. But for kids who experience trauma, this system falters, leaving ordinary pleasures feeling less rewarding, while joy becomes a distant memory. As we unravel this complex tapestry, it's clear that addiction isn't simply an act of rebellion or poor choice. It's often the echo of an unhealed childhood. Instead of seeing addiction as the end of the line, we start to understand it as a clue leading back to those emotions that were buried too deep to address. Fixing the addiction will never be straightforward until the root cause is exposed and embraced, and that's the real journey worth embarking on, diving into the depths of pain while seeking the healing that always seemed just out of reach. Later in life, when someone stumbles upon pleasures like alcohol, gambling, or even the endless scrolling on their phone, their brain ignites like a disco ball in a dark room. It shouts, "Finally, relief has arrived. I can feel something other than this nagging emptiness." This spark reveals a hidden link between childhood trauma and adult addictions. It's like finding a long-lost key that opens a door to a chaotic, uncharted land of coping mechanisms. Have you ever spotted that invisible sadness cloaked behind someone's smile? They can light up a party with laughter and crush it at work, but a closer look reveals a flickering, ghostly shimmer in their eyes. That's often the weight of unprocessed childhood pain. Our brains, clever little things, don't discriminate between emotional and physical wounds. They both scream threat to the nervous system, igniting cravings akin to gasping for air when underwater. It's not weakness, it's pure survival instinct. When I first stumbled into this mind-boggling research, it was like someone flipped a switch. Suddenly, everything clicked. Those seemingly strong folks spiraling into addiction weren't just lacking self-control. No, they were lugging around heavy emotional baggage, hidden memories and beliefs whispering you're unlovable or you're broken. Their addiction was a temporary fix, a way to hush those relentless inner critics. For a little while, it felt like healing, but like all good things, it was fleeting, leaving behind a wake of pain that inevitably returns. Now, ponder this for a moment. If childhood trauma rewires our brains, does that mean we're forever stuck in the past? Are we eternally trapped like characters in a gripping drama? Fear not, because the answer isn't a grim script. Not at all. It's a complex tapestry woven with hope and possibility. But let's dig deeper to uncover how trauma tucks itself away in our bodies and why it chooses to resurface with such force. Memories are like roller coasters, thrilling, but not just stories floating in our heads. They are dynamic sensations and behavioral patterns tucked neatly into our nervous systems. You know the gut drop you feel when someone yells, or how a certain scent can launch you decades back to your childhood. It's not just a coincidence, it's biology at play. Unresolved trauma can morph into emotional flashbacks, leaving adults feeling childishly helpless without realizing it. In these moments, the urge to escape is like a tidal wave, making addiction feel simply irresistible. Moreover, addiction isn't confined to substances like happy hour gin or the occasional puff. It can sneak into work, social media, even relationships. Anything that provides that sweet moment of relief can morph into an addiction if the underlying wound is throbbing enough. Enter trauma-informed therapy, the superhero of the emotional health world. It boldly shifts the focus from what's wrong with you to what happened to you. Suddenly, the narrative transforms, and healing becomes the new plot twist we've all been waiting for. That perspective shift is nothing short of revolutionary. Instead of pointing fingers and doling out judgment, we start embracing compassion and understanding. Picture this. Researchers dive into the lives of people who've faced childhood adversities like neglect and conflict. And guess what? They discover that those with more traumatic experiences face a skyrocketing risk of addiction. It's not just an increase, it's like a rocket launch. Each layer of trauma stacks pain on top of pain, making relief feel like an absolute necessity. Now, let's hit pause for a moment and revisit that child I mentioned earlier, the one staring at the ceiling pondering life's heavy burdens. That child isn't broken, they're simply doing their best to survive in a not-so-nurturing environment. Survival tactics vary. While some kids dive into perfectionism, endlessly seeking approval, others become rebels, demanding attention through mischief. Then there are those who shrink inward, crafting vibrant inner worlds as escapes from outer chaos. These adaptations are clever survival strategies, and they don't disappear. They can eventually morph into addictive behaviors. It's crucial to shift our perspective here. Viewing addiction as a cunning adaptation rather than a personal failure helps us see beyond the flaws. We start recognizing individuals for what they are, survivors of their circumstances. This realization unwraps an even more profound truth: if childhood trauma rewires the brain for addiction, then tackling that trauma can rewire the brain for freedom, neuroplasticity. The key player here reminds us that the same brain changed by pain can also be nurtured back to resilience. Now, let's tackle that burning question. Are we forever shackled by our childhood misfortunes if they've wired our brains for addiction? The surprising answer is a resounding no. Think of the brain not as a staunch machine that's stuck in its ways, but rather as pliable clay that can change and adapt. Thanks to neuroplasticity, pain can eventually give way to healing, however. The magic ingredient in this transformation is often underestimated safety. Consider this. Addiction frequently flourishes in the shadows of isolation and shame, steeped in the silence of "I can't tell anyone about this." Healing, on the flip side, craves connection. The nerves that were wounded in the context of relationships need the tender touch of connection to truly heal. Sometimes, it's through therapy, where compassionate ear offers a listening space free from judgment. Other times, it's that trusted friend who meets vulnerability with a warm embrace instead of a cold shoulder. But here's arguably the most critical part: learning to create a safe presence for yourself. Picture yourself whispering the supportive words you never heard as a child. As you cultivate this sense of safety, the brain begins to unwind, cortisol levels plummet, and the clutches of the stress response start to loosen their grip. Over time, cravings for that sweet escape begin to fade, like a distant rumble of thunder boring into oblivion. Buckle up, because what's coming next promises to be even more intriguing. Mindfulness, meditation, and deep breathing aren't just trendy buzzwords. These practices actually work wonders. Studies reveal that they help rewire those trauma-affected brain circuits, giving your prefrontal cortex a muscular boost in decision-making while putting the amygdala, your fear factory, on a nice vacation. Over time, those dopamine pathways, which were once commandeered by vices, start responding to life's simple pleasures like basking in the sunlight or sharing a hearty laugh. Healing transforms from a mundane chore into a vibrant adventure of rediscovery. And here's a juicy little tidbit that often flies under the radar. Healing doesn't happen in a snap. It's a sneaky process that takes place in those quiet, daily choices. It's all about sitting with awkward feelings for a beat instead of running for the hills, reaching out to a friend instead of retreating into solitude, and giving yourself a gentle pep talk instead of a harsh critique. While these moments may seem tiny, they're monumental to your nervous system, like stitching up your favorite pair of jeans. Each bit counts in mending that fabric of self. Now, have you met those incredible people who seem to glow with wisdom after surviving years of addiction? It's like they've been through the fire and emerged not just unscathed, but with a spectacular sense of empathy. They've learned to embrace their story, turning that pain into a profound understanding of others' struggles. Their battles become wisdom, and that is no fluke. Once they rise from the ashes of trauma, they gain the ability to offer solace to those who are still lost in the darkness. Talk about poetic justice. But let's get real for a minute here. The road isn't paved with roses. Addiction often feels like a heavy anchor dragging you back down just when you think you're floating above water. That's where self-compassion comes in like a gallant superhero. If you find yourself falling back into old patterns, don't beat yourself up. Each slip is merely a step in the complex dance of rewiring your brain. Imagine learning to walk again. Sure, you'll trip, but those slips only strengthen your resolve. Now, here's a delightful curiosity for you. Therapists have discovered that when it comes to overcoming addiction, willpower is only part of the puzzle. It's when individuals unearth a deeper purpose that the true magic happens. Whether it's creating art, serving others, or nurturing a passion, finding that meaning becomes the ultimate antidote to feelings of emptiness. Suddenly, the need for substances fades away, as worthiness fills those previously desolate voids. In essence, healing is not about achieving flawless perfection but maintaining unwavering persistence. It's all about picking yourself back up, acknowledging those small triumphs, and moving forward with conviction. Those who embrace this philosophy ultimately paint their own vibrant story. Regardless of the chaotic chapters that preceded it, they emerge as not just survivors, but as warriors of transformation, turning pain into purpose and anchoring themselves in newfound joy. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, famously said that having a reason to live helps one endure even the most difficult situations. This resonates deeply, especially for those grappling with childhood trauma. Often, early wounds strip away our sense of worth, leading some to seek solace in addiction. But, when we rediscover that hidden spark of meaning and connection within ourselves, addiction starts to lose its grip. What we truly crave isn't merely a substance but genuine connection, purpose, and above all, Love. Let's visualize that child caught in turmoil, a reflection of confusion and loneliness, staring blankly at a ceiling. Fast forward a few decades, and that same child grows into an adult sitting in a serene room, inhaling deeply, possibly shedding tears as they share their story with an empathetic listener. In those precious moments, something magical happens. The child within feels recognized, while the adult finds relief. This transformative experience represents healing that countless souls have bravely embarked upon to confront their pain. In my research, I stumbled upon an unexpected twist. Healing isn't just an individual journey, it's a family affair. Enter intergenerational trauma, where the scars of one generation can unwittingly be passed down. Traumas do not merely mold behaviors, they can seep into our very biology. A child whose parent wrestled with unresolved trauma can inherit trembling patterns of stress. The good news, however, is that when one brave soul decides to confront their past rather than avoid it, that courage doesn't just alter their life, it sends ripples through the lives of generations yet to come. So, where does that leave us in our collective storytelling? Yes, childhood trauma can open the door to addiction, but that's just one chapter. The narrative isn't final, it can indeed be rewritten. The same brain once obsessed with escape can pivot to embracing the present. That heart, once shattered, can rekindle its resilient beat. A life that once felt steeped in shadows can morph into a beacon of hope for others still lost in the darkness. If you found resonance in this narrative, it may touch on your own experiences or those of someone dear to you. And remember, addiction isn't about lacking willpower, it's a voice echoing pain. Healing, in contrast, is the sweet language of love. Every single step toward kindness, every moment of meaningful connection, and every brave act becomes a revolutionary act. They prove that no matter how profound the wound or how far one may fall, the human spirit is destined to rise. This reflection brings me to a tantalizing question. What if those scars you carry aren't symbols of frailty? Instead, what if they serve as maps guiding you out of darkness into a life amplified with depth and significance beyond your wildest dreams? That's the enchanting paradox of healing. It doesn't just erase what has been, it reshapes it. And in that beautiful transformation lies the essence of true freedom.